Hey everyone. Haven't made a video in a couple weeks. I've been having a lot of stuff going on, but there was I guess you could call it a big development in my life that I want to talk about. I no longer work for a movie theater. Uh, After 3.5 years, I finally decided it was time to leave that whole thing behind, and I want to talk a little bit about working at a movie theater, and I figure after this video, if people have like questions or they want to follow up on anecdotes or something, they can just leave them in the comments, and then I can make some more videos down the road. But basically, here's the thing. So, I used to live in Rhode Island, and I had a bank job there for about 7 years, and then I moved down to North Carolina, and I couldn't find a job at all. So I spent 1 year unemployed. I basically just lived off my savings because I'm pretty good with money, so I had a decent savings cushion there. And then after a year, things were a little bit, it's like you better get some money in. So I applied to just not real jobs, basically jobs that most people like half my age would have. And I figured there was a movie theater that was fairly close to where I lived at the time. And I figured that even though it pays shit, I could get all the free movies and all that stuff, so I thought that was cool. And I ended up getting that job. And then I started off as what they call floor staff, which is basically your normal stuff. Working concessions, working box office, standing at the tickets and ripping them, usher and cleaning it, or the head of the ushers, sort of, which is the porter, and that's the guy who comes in with the light and makes sure the movie is fine and throws people out if they're talking and stuff. Well, supposed to. And then I was only there for about a year when a couple of the other people on the management staff started sort of leaving quickly, and so there was a big gap to fill. And then me being about twice as old as any of the other 16 to 20-year-old employees, I applied, and I ended up getting the one of the part-time manager jobs there, and then for 2.5 of the 3.5 years I finally spent there, that was the role I had, where I wore, a suit that had like little flare buttons on. You've seen me kind of wear it in a few videos if I filmed the video after a shift there. Yeah, so why did I finally leave after 3.5 years? Well, a little over a year ago, turmoil in my life kind of got a little set up there, and basically in order to get an apartment, like which I finally live in now, and pay bills and stuff, I couldn't have just that job anymore. I needed like a real full-time job. So I ended up getting that in April of last year. And then once I had that full-time job, I didn't actually need to keep the theater job to live. The full-time job did and does pay enough to cover my bills and my lifestyle and all that stuff. But at the time, a lot of stuff was going on. I was dealing with a breakup and a new place to live and trying to sort out all my life, and everything was just kind of changing and very new, and it's like, I get anxiety. So I felt that staying at the theater would have a certain continuity that would sort of help bridge all this other stuff, that if I had this one familiar thing to do on the weekends, that all the other change and turmoil I could deal with better. So that's basically what I did, where instead of working the normal part-time 30 hours a week, you can't work over 30 hours a week because the company didn't want to have to pay for people's health insurance, so they kept you under that. It was one of the greedy bourgeois pigs' loopholes to not provide people health care under the ACA. But instead of doing that, I ended up cutting it down to where I would just work Saturday and Sunday because I was working the other days of the week. So basically I went down to just I was working regular job for the 5 days of the week, and then the weekend job for 2 days of the week, and I had like no days off. There were a couple months where I had like no days off whatsoever. It's kind of running me a bit ragged. But I figured, I could still, no matter what change and new stuff was happening, I could still on the weekend do this job that I'm familiar with, see the people that I work with, some of whom are friends, some of whom were at least friendly acquaintances who I enjoyed working with, and that sort of thing. Unlike my full-time job where it's just kind of acquaintances, I don't really have any like friends or anything there. Just, not enough like shared interests and stuff. And I figured, just being able to do something that familiar would be fine. Plus, whenever people ask me why was I still working at the theater, I just kind of gave them a flippant answer. It's like, hey, it's free movies and gas money. That was kind of true. Obviously, I didn't need the job for gas, but at least it allowed me to see still free movies for a while. So, and I figured, I've already seen tens of thousands of dollars worth of free movies. That's sort of the thing. Movie theaters, especially if you're floor staff, they pay you bare, like, minimum wage. It's actually a kind of a fucking travesty that they don't pay them more because they work their ass off. But they sort of, toss you this, like, hey, we're gonna pay you shit, we're not gonna give you health care and all that stuff, but hey, we'll give you free movies. So, I mean, if you're a 16-year-old kid, you work in high school, that's fine. You don't really need money at that time of your life, or maybe you do now, but you didn't when I was 16. And you could make a little bit of money, see some free movies, you can get one friend with you into the movies or whoever you're dating, whatever. And then once you get to college, you can get like a real job and to pay for tuition and that shit, so it's fine. But the problem is, with the economy kind of sucking still, despite the stock market increasing and all that stuff, you had a lot of people, not necessarily my age, but at least a tad bit younger than my age. Like, you had most of the floor staff, I'd say, were about between like 16 and 21. And then the people who had been there a little bit longer were working through college and didn't go away to college, or the management staff, they were usually like mid to late 20s. I think with the exception of the general manager for most of the time, I think, and one other older person who worked, great lady, I was like the second oldest of the people there for most of the time I was there. That's alright, because apparently people still think I'm in my mid-20s. So, I really just kind of stayed there just so I'd have that familiar thing in the free movies. That, and also, I had so much, because of all that turmoil and shit, and I'm one of those people who, aside from all that stuff, I'm pretty prone to depression in general, loneliness, all that kind of bullshit. You can tell that because I make videos on YouTube. So I figured if I kept myself so busy that I wouldn't have time for my brain to dwell on, negative shit. So I figured that's why, working 7 days a week, I didn't have time because I was too running myself ragged to do these two jobs and everything. And for a while, I think that was a good thing for me. It was something I absolutely needed. And but as time went on and I became more stable at the full-time job, and I put a bit more distance between myself and the epicenter of the turmoil, which sort of happened January 2017, I didn't really need that anymore. I kind of wanted free time again. So I figured the combination of not needing that job monetarily, my emotional state being a bit more stable now that like a year and a half had gone by since that turmoil, and the advent of MoviePass, oddly enough, where it's not a free movie, but it's unlimited movies for $9.95 a month until they eventually go bankrupt because they can't afford the business model. I'll make another video on MoviePass, someone's been asking for it. And all of that was sort of like, yeah, it's about time to go. That and the customer bullshit. I mean, for someone who worked collections, I never thought that there'd be worse customers at a movie theater than over the phone that you're trying to collect on. It's really, because a movie, no one's forcing you to go there. You're supposed to go there and be excited because you're seeing a movie and you have a good time, but people are just fucking pissed, like, all the time about bullshit. It's like, oh, my pizza's too burnt. Well, why are you buying a pizza at a movie theater, you fucking idiot? Or, my popcorn's stale. No, I just popped it. Popcorn is naturally dry. You don't know what stale popcorn tastes like. Or, I don't know. I should make another video about stupid customer complaints. That's a different topic. And perhaps I will. But, man. And there was only so many times you can make chicken sandwiches for fucking ingrates, and then it's like, seeing Marvel movies for free is not worth this. So I ended up deciding to quit. And that was about a couple of weeks ago now. Don't regret it. I mean, here's sort of like the bottom line. I mean, there's a lot of bullshit about working in a movie theater. You're sweeping up other people's trash. There's people who don't respect you. They don't pay you enough. There's a lot of weird like bullshit from corporate. There's a lot of bullshit that makes it like grating to work at. But I haven't had many jobs in my time. Luckily, once I found a job, I've usually stayed in that job for a while. So I think I've only had, not counting guest appearances on Tosh, I think I've had like 4 actual jobs in my life, and the movie theater was definitely the funnest. I guess it was definitely the most enjoyable. And, moving from Rhode Island to North Carolina, I'm not the kind of person who, like, meets people easily, like, for, like, friendships and shit. And so I'd say every friend I have in North Carolina, with 2 exceptions. The 2 exceptions I met while out, while my ex and I were out doing stuff. But everyone else I've met at the theater. Like, when I had to leave the place I was living with my ex and I didn't have a place to stay, I crashed with a friend and his wife who I met working at the theater. When I didn't have anyone to hang out with on New Year's this year, I hung out with my friend Steven, who I met at the theater, and he's in a couple of videos on this channel, by the way. When I went to a local community college to get an associate's, to bolster my useless bachelor's in film studies, I would hang out on campus with Carson, who I met through the theater. It was like almost everyone I met and had like friendships with has been through the theater, like in the entire time that I've lived in North Carolina. And part of that's because if you're working at a movie theater and you can get easily a higher paying job almost anywhere, like even like a Walmart or Target will pay more, or McDonald's and stuff, you're mostly probably there because you like movies and you want to see all the free movies. So me being a movie geek, being able to discuss movies and on a regular basis, because it's also part of the job, was really cool, and that sort of bonds you. And then despite the fact that I'm 34 years old at the recording of this video, and most of the people working there were late teens, early 20s, I tend to, in some cases, not always, but in some cases have more in common with these people than my actual peers, and maybe that's just because I'm an immature dork. So it was fun to kind of talk to these people who were like, maybe 24, 25, still like a decade younger than me, but who are still a bit more on my wavelength, probably because people my age, they have kids or they're married, and I'm a single loser who's going to die alone and had a vasectomy because I don't want kids, that kind of thing. So I ended up sort of gravitating toward people like this more, and the theater was sort of chock-a-block with such people. And there were people like, there was this one kid I worked with, super military guy, like tall, buff, like right-wing Trump supporter, and I get along with him fine. It was like people didn't have to be exactly like me for me to get along with them under that circumstance, because they were just really good people to work with. And the one big thing aside from free movies that I'm going to miss working there is the people. Yeah, and then some of them I'll keep in contact with social media and stuff, but ultimately it's a little weird when you're 34 because no one's going to invite you to hang out with them if they're in your early 20s and you're like the old dude. So generally I'm not going to hang out with these people for the most part, just because the social creepy factor. But I'll follow them in social media, and a few of the ones that are closer to my age I'll hang out with and stuff, like the fellow managers and stuff probably. Even now, like one of the managers, Andrew, he texts me on a fairly regular basis about movies because his movie knowledge is pretty much on the same level as me. I might know a little bit about older stuff, but he's more knowledgeable about like the current trends in business and stuff. Probably because I'm not as big a fan of movies coming out now as like when 1970s, before I was born, and the stuff I grew up with. Matt, I talk to regularly. He's another. About a decade younger than me. He was another fellow manager. He started off on floor staff around the time I started off on floor staff, and he likes horror movies and stuff, so I talk with him. By the way, some of these people have other YouTubes, so I'm going to plug them. So here's Matt's YouTube. He's a up-and-coming singer and stuff. Really, really, like, one of the nicest guys I've ever met. Steven, who has been on other channels, and I've given him a shout out, or other videos on the channel rather, and I've given him a shout out. He's Mr. Nictus on YouTube. And Carson, when he feels like uploading it, he does like video game streams and stuff. So here's Carson. Yeah. So I'm gonna miss the people that I work with. I'm not gonna miss the customers. Because, man, and I don't know what it is, but also my theater tended to get the worst people. Like, before I worked at that theater, I was always upset that the theater never got, like, indie films or stuff that I was interested in. It only got, like, mainstream garbage, and that's because the people in that area only like mainstream garbage. Like, the town that that theater is located in, it's a town that's it's like a suburb of Raleigh, but on one side of it's Raleigh, and on the other side of it is Rednecksville for like 3 hours straight in one direction of North Carolina. So the movies that did well were the Christian pieces of shit, the Pure Flick stuff, your American Sniper shit, Medea Halloween shit, and also the worst dregs of teenage society went to that theater. Because like every fucking PG-13 horror movie was murder. Like the worst nights I've worked there were with PG-13 horror movies and kids who wouldn't stop talking and having to give refunds to the adults and all that stuff. In the last few months that I worked there, they actually had like a curfew, or what they called the adult accompaniment policy, where Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, no one under 18 could be allowed on the premises without someone over 21 accompanying them, regardless of if they were even seeing a movie that wasn't rated R. And a lot of people complained about that. Parents complained about it because they couldn't drop off their kids. But honestly, those kids were fucking ingrates and they needed to go away. And it got a lot better to work there when that happened. So fuck everyone who's for giving the theater bad reviews on Google because they can't drop off their fucking ingrate kids. Well, that's not our fault. You bred and had a piece of shit. Don't drop them off at the movie to talk during fucking Happy Death Day or The Village or whatever fucking bullshit came out. God, and people complaining about us not getting a certain movie. We didn't control what movies we showed. That's made by a booker at headquarters. We have no control over that. Don't be mad at us. I don't know. There was a lot of. I'll make customer bitching another video because that's people always ask like if we find weird things in the theater and stuff. I can make a video about all that shit too. I guess. What I'd like to do is, if you have a question about what it's like to work at a movie theater at this time, whether it's about like the industry or just anecdotes on the ground or any sort of basic stuff like that, leave a question in the comments and I can extrapolate and make further videos later about this, but this video is already running a bit long. But I just really wanted to say that, for all of the bullshit, I'm gonna miss it because it really was a fun, enjoyable experience, and for the time in my life that I worked there, it was what I needed. It was good for me. I didn't have a job when I was in high school. I just didn't need one at the time. So I didn't get my first job until my 20s. So I never got to sort of be on the trenches and be like a service worker and all that stuff. So being that it's a little humbling, it's also a little embarrassing when you're in your late 20s, early 30s working there. A little less embarrassing once I got promoted and had to wear a suit instead of like the fucking uniform. But it was good for me. I'm glad I had that experience. Yeah, leave comments if you have more stuff to talk about. What else? Brad doesn't have a YouTube to pimp out. Brad's the one who's given me very into stuff to try, but he said that at one point he might want to come over, meet Carl, and do like a little collab video. And I don't know, maybe someone else who worked at the theater will come over, we'll do movie reviews or something. I don't know, we'll see what happens. The good news is I finally have more free time now, so I'm hoping to be able to make more videos on a regular basis because I don't have the theater job anymore, I just have my full-time job. And my hours at my full-time job are such where instead of working 5 days a week for 40 hours, I work 4 days a week for 10-hour shifts, and that's how I get my 40 hours in. So I have a 3-day weekend every single weekend. So I'm hoping that with all that extra free time and all that stuff, that I will finally be able to make more videos, more consistent stuff. I want to get back to doing Dave's Faves. And there's a couple other things I'd like to try for some YouTube stuff. So, thanks for sticking with me during this dry spell and kind of, I know this channel ever since the Goosebumps shit ended because my ex and I broke up, that I haven't really had much of a direction as far as where to go in this, and most of the fans abandoned ship. Thank you for those of you who are still here. For those of you who did work at the theater with me and still watch the videos, thank you. I had a great time working with you guys. You were still some of the best people I've ever been able to work with. You absolutely deserve health care and to be paid more, and it's bullshit that you're not, and that's why you need to rise up and seize the means of production. Okay, I'm going to end it there. Thanks everybody, and leave your questions for follow-up videos.